Hello and welcome to the New Moon Tarot reading for September. I'm recording this about 11 hours before the new moon, so that's going to fall in the wee hours of Tuesday the 7th of September at 1:52 a.m. UK time. But for many of you listening, because I do have a lot of listeners in North America, for example, it will fall on the 5th of September. I'll be putting timestamps in this podcast so that you don't have to listen to the introduction that I always do for those of you who are new to the reading. So please do check those out, and you can jump straight into the reading by clicking on the first stamp, which would be for card 1. But for those of you who are new to the new moon reading, welcome. And I'm going to just do a very brief rundown of how it is that I read. I do a 3-card reading. Sometimes it's 4. It's never more than that. I will sometimes draw a 4th card to qualify a particular card in the reading, and that is always done on the fly. So I have no idea whether this is going to be a 3-card reading or a 4-card reading. It will all depend on the cards that are drawn. And I draw the cards, I've drawn the cards, there are 3 cards in front of me, but I don't turn them over until I actually come to them in the reading. So I am reading alongside you, or rather you are listening to this alongside me, and we are both sort of discovering these cards for the first time. The first card in the reading that I do is always the foundation card. I like to stress here that this is not something that is going to happen. This is something that has already happened, given the fact that it's a foundation, because otherwise you can't build on anything if the foundations don't already exist. So it's already happened, or it is in the process of happening, but it is in some way diminishing in terms of its direct, immediate influence. So the foundation is key then to the second card in the reading. And that second card is the current theme for the month, the weather, the prevailing weather. And that weather is either inside or outside. It's psychic weather, but it can make itself apparent in our real world as well, whether that's through others, our interactions with others, or events that happen. But in some way it holds a key. Now that key may be very obvious in its importance or significance, or it may be a key that you look back quite a long time from now sometimes, or maybe weeks, but it could be years, and go, now it's only now that I can see that had the kind of significance that had escaped me at the time. So this is really not about looking specifically for something if you aren't finding it. So if it's not announcing itself immediately and prevalently in your life or in the lives of those around you or in the world, then it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just means that perhaps it is yet to fulfill its entire meaning. It is yet to come to fruition, or perhaps it is that your focus is yet to shift towards it, because perhaps at this moment in time you're not able to see it, you're not ready to see it, or there is something else taking up your focus. And that may be immediately more important, but this theme card, number 2, is going to be important in some way. And how the foundation and the theme interact is really quite an important part as well. So the foundation, something that's already happened or is in the process of ending in terms of its strength of presence in your life, is going to have a particular alchemical interaction with the theme card, because what it is that you bring in will be how you experience card number 2. And then finally, the third card is the agency card, the tool card, something where you are given a sense of being not really about controlling, this isn't controlling, but about how you can meaningfully interact with, respond to, or see, depending on the level of control that you feel that you have or that you're able to have with what is unfolding in card 2. So it is a way of engaging that will bring meaning, that will be personally meaningful to you. And so therefore all 3 together really form quite a self-contained reading that will spell out some kind of experience, again, either inner or outer or both, that is transformative in some small or large way, but either way it's going to be significant. So I'm going on to the first card, the foundation card, what has already happened, what is in the process of happening but is diminishing in terms of its immediate impact, and which will pave the way then for card number 2. And that is the Six of Wands, which in the Röhrig deck that I always read from in these readings is the victory card. The Six of Wands is piquing my interest at the moment in the context of another conversation that I had in another podcast that I do on my Patreon page, which is one of 3 of 78, where I talk about the Two of Wands. And I think it's worth just going to the Two of Wands very briefly to talk about this, because it in some ways situates the Six of Wands. So let's look at this as the foundation to the foundation. The Two of Wands in this deck is where there are, and I will put up a picture of it, there are two wands that are standing as kind of gateposts or a gateway through to a journey that is made up of two paths which have crisscrossed just at the point of where the two wands are in the ground, but then make their own separate ways, winding ways up this hill to this distant citadel. What I remarked when I was doing the podcast, one of 3 of 78, was the fact that those paths are not straight, they are not tarred, nor are they visible. And yet here we have in the Six of Wands a straight road that is tarmacked, and it is visible, well, up to a point. So Röhrig gives you the idea of it being a bit smoother sailing compared to the Two of Wands, the roads in the Two of Wands. It's almost as if where the Two of Wands is the hero setting out on the journey, and the journey is unknown. It could seem perilous. There are going to be all kinds of things that bring the hero face to face with dangers perceived and real, but there is also a sense of mystery and a sense of risk. In the Six of Wands, it's as if part of the journey has been done where there is a sort of temporary easing in the road. And as you can see here, this wall that was there has been broken through, and it seems like it's almost as if it's a constructed wall. You don't see rock that is that thin, that is, that sort of occurs naturally. It's a sort of barrier that is symbolic. And the road then stretches on past that straight and again towards that hill in the distance. And you've got the Six of Wands floating above, which sort of feel like they're in the middle distance. And they are almost a beacon that light the way. Also interesting that I notice with the left-hand side of the rock face, it quite literally is a rock face. So there's something here, I think, about being able to overcome a particularly human struggle in something that has been achieved. And I think back to actually the Nine of Wands that was in July's reading with that rock or that stone chamber that had been blasted apart in that light. And the Six is almost like the Nine in some kind of embryonic form, in as much as there's only one wall. It's not a cube. And of course it's the Six, so it's not it's before the Nine in the way that the suit evolves. But again, there is that light that is there, that is very obvious, very prevalent, and Röhrig uses light a lot. It is, of course, the source to which one moves. It is oneself, really. It's as if you've been going along this road, and the road is quite nice, and then you reach this wall. And remember, this has happened in the past. And you think, how the hell am I going to continue? This is ridiculous. It's not as if I can't go up, I can't go around. And then events in some way, and it will be, I would say, a psychic force. And I don't mean that as in a force that comes out of nowhere in some kind of sort of godlike spectacle and shift something, though that may happen for one or two of you. I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but for most of people who listen to this, that's probably not going to be true. It is going to be a shift perhaps in one's own energetic signature, and by that I mean a change of heart, a way of seeing things, a way of being differently. And so instead of saying a psychic shift, it is a shift in the psyche. And that then allows this wall to just crumble, and then you can continue. If I think of the Six of Wands in the Waite-Smith deck as well, there is that man riding a horse who's being cheered on by the other people around him. None of the others are in horses as far as I can remember, and all of these wands are in the air, and then he has a victory laurel on the top of his wand. And I always get the very pervasive sense when I look at that card that it is one step of the battle, and I say that in inverted commas, one. So in other words, there is an achievement, but it is not the end of the road, and this is the same here. There is a sense of graduating from something, and that young man, well, he is relatively young in the Waitsmith. It's as if it's a passing out celebration. It's a way of having in some way achieved a particular goal, but then the journey continues. Then it's time to continue. It's time to sort of step more and more into one's own self, one's own power, to discover more and more the resources that lie within. And those are those 6 wands that are in the distance still. They're not right there. They are always, it gives me a feeling like a mirage in a way, but a mirage that's real, but would also keep one step away from you, because it is a journey that in a way doesn't really have an end, but it has these milestones of achievement along the way, but there is always still something to aim for. And then that's also seen by the smaller light source behind the hill in the distance, that in some way the journey continues, but right now something has happened. So the foundation, as it has shown up in your life, has been some kind of easing of circumstances. Now this will manifest in your outside life, no doubt, but it has had its beginnings, its genesis in your inside life. And it is in a sense of being able to reconnect with a flow that wasn't there before. You may not know why. You don't even need to know why, but there is a reconnecting in with something that feels vital, that revivifies, that brings a certain amount of energy and meaning that you can then take out into the world, and then that obstacle that felt like it was interminable, that it kept going, that you couldn't get through it, crumbles. Because in some way your attitude towards life, towards it, maybe towards yourself, has changed. And again, you may not need to know why or how it happened, but it's just that there is a sense of increased flow and a sense of increased spaciousness and possibility inside. If this doesn't feel like it is within reach, then what I would suggest, because very often we tend to see these things in absolutes. So you'll think, well, a sense of spaciousness and flow means that there is endless space and continual flow. And I don't mean that. I mean that there is going to be a sense of spaciousness as compared to how you were feeling before, a sense of more flow as compared to the flow that you were experiencing or the lack of flow before. So it is what has changed in a way that is significant to you, and what has changed comparatively for you. Only you are the person who can compare how you were maybe a month or 2 ago and how you are now, how you were experiencing life a month or 2 ago and how you are experiencing it now. Is there a sense of something freeing up inside? Even if you can't identify it, you might be able to feel it. That is the 6 of Wands, and that is foundational to what it is that we are shifting into this month for the next 4 weeks, but then obviously beyond and forever. And that is the second card, which is the 5 of Swords. Now, it's interesting here that you've also got a journey and this is what strikes me immediately, that the 5 of Swords is almost going to feel like a step back. It's not a step back, however. It's going to feel like it. You're going to think it's a step back. Or there may be a temptation to think it's a step back. And that will be to do with the idea of swords versus wands. So the 5 of Swords is some kind of antagonistic snarl up that happens in one's mind, and where it feels like there is a conflict, which may also be an external conflict. But the conflict is very much experienced inwardly as well. But it is a conflict of thoughts. Thoughts are conflicted in some way. There is a winner-takes-all kind of attitude, or no sense of peace. The fact that somebody has to win and somebody has to lose. But that is what you are encountering as a possibility. It's not necessarily what has to happen, but it is the thing that is going to be defining some moment in your life over the next 4 weeks. Let's put it in context. There you are, you've had this minor victory, and I say minor victory in as much as it's a minor arcana victory. It is a day-to-day, or it can feel quite subtle at times. It may not feel subtle either. We all work on different spectrums with this, so it can feel really subtle, and it could feel really actually quite bloody obvious what's going on. But there is that idea of the Six of Wands and the path clearing the way, and then bloody hell, look what happens. Then you've got the Five of Swords there, and you seem to have that wall back again. So that wall that has been dismantled there is now that wall that is in the Five of Swords that you, the figure, are standing on, and you are looking off into the distance. Now I'm going to read a couple of the words that I hopefully can see here. Well, there is defeat, obviously. There is loss, and there is afraid. So again, this is fear, or being afraid is a mental state. What is going to happen? Afraid is of what's going to happen. It's not what has happened. Something may have happened, but there is also then the anticipation that something else is going to happen. So there is that clear road, and then suddenly, boom, there is going to be a feeling that you're right back where you were on that wall, or associated with that wall that has fallen down. And I would suggest that that's not the case, and for this reason. As a wand, the Six of Wands is the libidinal flow that underpins all of life. And it is here, as I said, a particularly alive kind of card in as much as things open out. All of the other cards then, or the suits, flow from that idea of that fiery libidinal energy, that creativity that comes along. And we very often grapple with the Swords cards because they seem so fucking harsh a lot of the time. Excuse my French, but they really do. And one of the reasons why is the mind itself. The mind looks at the mind and ends up wrapping in and around itself again. It's not the straightforward, non-mental, non-emotional, non-physical wands which are really pure fire. This is air. It is, it can be a howling wind. It can be a gentle breeze, but more often than not, it's a howling wind in the swords for a lot of the cards. And that is the idea of as I said, that the mind creating mental gymnastics in and around itself, because that's what it does. That is its blessing and that is its curse. It is incredibly analytical. It can work things out. It is being driven towards the solving of the mysteries of the universe. It can create medical discoveries. It can write the most incredible novel or thesis or whatever. But it can also snarl itself up into fear, into a sense of loss, into a feeling of defeat, and into all of those negative thoughts that then not only impact our own experience of the world, but our experience of others. And also others can experience that sense of swords coming to them from us, and we can feel that coming to us from them. And so the mind is very, very clever in as much as it can solve things. But in terms of being able to approach life with a sense of equanimity and a sense of objectivity, it is not necessarily very good with that, particularly when things start to feel personal. And so if there is, and I'm just going to give a suggestion, a sense of this spaciousness that's opened up in the wands, one of the things that we'll want to do with that feeling very often is go, I don't ever want this to end. I don't want this to end. Please let my path now be clear forevermore. And most of us will know that that's not possible, but we will just want to cling on to that for as much as, as long as we can, Surely I've deserved this. Surely life has been tough enough for me lately. Surely I need to have some sense of assurance from the universe, from God, from within, whatever it is that we look to, that actually I can be cut a break now. And then when something happens that is not like that, or doesn't feel like that, or you think it is not that, then boom, it feels like right back on that wall, or right back at that wall, and that sense of defeat and loss and fear. Defeat because that path really didn't turn out to be as promisingly straight and open as you thought it was going to be. And loss because that loss of a sense of direction and that sense of spaciousness, perceived loss, and fear that this might be something that will, that it's all for nothing, that you've gone backwards, that you're right back where you began, and that cannot be true. That because it just isn't. We cannot. That saying, you cannot step in the same river twice. It's the same thing here. The mind will look and go, I'm right back where I started. I don't know why I even thought there was a point to that. It's as if it didn't happen. But I'd like to remind you of what did happen in the Six of Wands. And I am going to read some of the words on this card as well. Victory, success, clear breakthrough. Clear breakthrough. Or to put it another way, this clear breakthrough allows you to continue on your path until you reach the Five of Swords. What are you going to choose? What is your mind going to do here? Is it going to put you right back, which is a fantasy? It doesn't exist, that kind of illusion of being right back. And swords, as soon as the mind goes, the heart goes with it, the energy goes with it, it saps everything, it changes how we experience tangible life as well. So all the suits get involved. So are we going to just go with that idea of sense of defeat, or are we going to see it for what it is, which is an obstacle, one that we know that we've been able to clear through obstacles before? Here's another one. And what is it that you can bring that you have learnt from the Six of Wands to be able to do something about this, which in some way will help you to negotiate it much more quickly? I'm also interested in the fact that there is a configuration of the swords there. You've got the three swords on the one side and you've got the two swords on the other. So the three, and there is, for me, there is never any accident that these suits are grouped in a particular way. So let's look at the Three of Swords first. The Three of Swords is the pain of loss. It is the pain of being an orchestrator of your own heartbreak. It is the pain of never being able to attain a sense of oneness constantly. And so there is that loss again, being torn out of oneness, feeling that sense of loss if there is, the Three of Swords is very often a love triangle. So that there is torn allegiances, but that's perceived torn allegiances. That is not the truth. If you go to the Waite-Smith version of the deck, the heart that those swords go through is not a human heart. It is a symbolic heart. It is the idea that we put on what love is. And so you have this Three of Swords here, which is that love triangle, torn allegiances, but it is also that primal sense of loss. And it is a sense of loss that we carry, all of us, to a greater or lesser extent through our lives. It is that particular existential feeling of losing oneness that we then project out onto other people, other situations, and we often repeat. So we have the Three of Swords there, but then you have the Two of Swords on the other side. And if I go back to the Two of Swords in the Röhrig deck, it is that idea of safe passage. It is an internal state of equilibrium in order to move from one state to another, from one place to another. It is an acknowledgement that something needs to be just suspended long enough so that there is a shift. And that is a shift from one geographical domain to another one, but it is also our internal geography as well. And so the 5 is where there is a snarl up between those two conflicting things. Do we shift with the 2, or do we stay stricken with the 3? Do we stay in the pain of that separation of the 3, or do we suspend our judgment enough to be able to reach a new place? And then I think when we do that, we understand that we are not actually where we were facing this wall before it was broken through in the 6 of Wands. In fact, in defeat, we are on top of the wall, and the light source is feeling like it is coming from us. It is from that protagonist who is dwarfed, yes, by this structure, but is the only thing that is shining with its own light. And when that happens, then really the message is clear with the 5 of Swords, and that is the light comes from within. Remember that. It is not coming from anywhere out there. It is not coming from, it's not been hidden because of the experience. The light comes from within you. You are on top of the wall. You are free to continue. There is no point in staying in this place, the 5 of Swords, anymore. That place is the thing that is defeated. It is the place that is defeated. It is the place that has suffered loss. And it is time to sort of gather your inner resources, rally your psyche, remember that connection that you have to that light within, that energy. It may feel like that light is dulled. It's definitely decreased in size, but it is there and it is with you. It's a very hermit kind of moment, that idea of going within, finding the light within. And then to shift perspective as that figure is there and look off out into the distance. And he will see something different from what we are seeing looking at him. So remember that protagonist, as it reflects an aspect of you, is seeing something different as well. That light enclosed figure, which I would say is the self in miniature, has a different perspective from your perspective at the other side of the wall. And so then the idea of the 6 of Wands is hinted at once again, that it is not the same thing. So when this experience happens, however it happens, I would say that one of the things to remember is not to forget. It is about not forgetting what it felt like to have that sense of spaciousness. That hasn't gone away. It doesn't reverse. It doesn't do that, but it can be clouded over. It can be shrouded by an experience that then comes to test us. It's almost as if you have this clear road ahead of you. Okay, you've had this clear road. You had that achievement. How are you going to do when this comes up? You may not have met this obstacle if you hadn't gone and achieved victory with the other one. And that is a step forward, even while the mind might say, step back. Stay with the 3 of Swords and get that snarl up and that sense of being torn apart, or go with the 2 of Swords and create enough safe passage to shift you to a different point of view, and then another time and place as well. And then the final card, which, I think it's going to be the final card, we'll see. So this is the agency card. I know that we've done quite a lot of agency actually in these 2 cards, but let's see what the agency card is as well, whether it gels with what I've been talking about, or whether it's something completely different, which may throw another sort of shaft of light onto the reading. And this is what you have to be able to interact meaningfully with the events that are going on this month. And that is the Prince of Cups. And while I wouldn't say that it is entirely counter to what I was saying, it's coming in another form. So the Prince of Cups is a personality. So in other words, the court cards are not necessarily, I don't see the court cards as sort of numerical continuation of the numbered cards, but rather they are aspects of the personality, or they are aspects of you or somebody else. They may represent someone else as well. And the Prince of Cups here is what we would call the Knight of Cups in the Waite-Smith deck. So not the youngest, not the page, the next one up, the questing conqueror that goes out into the world. And as you can see here, he is very much facing the rest of the reading. So his focus is there except his eyes are closed, and I am curious about that. So his eyes are closed. What is he focusing on? Well, we can see what he's focusing on. There is a lot of tits and ass on this card, and that is a very crude way of saying that there's something here about the Prince of Cups focusing on something where he is in the process of maturing from this idea of how much can I get, how much can I go out and acquire, where am I going to be able to get rid of all of this libidinous energy, how am I going to prove myself, where am I going to get my kicks, to then maturing into the Knight of Cups, which is the king who has learned how to temper, not tame, I don't know, well, maybe tame, but just not defeat. It's not about the Five of Swords. To temper that idea of cups as in the falling in love, that very highly charged inner environment that happens that can feel all-consuming, which is where the Prince of Cups pretty much is, but maybe then is in the process of looking at this idea of victory and defeat, and is in the process of maturing into the Knight. So I'm going to have a look at the card and see if there's anything written on this. Desire and wishes and transformation, and that is everything that there is in English as far as I can see. So it's desire, wishes, and transformation. And that idea of transformation is it is really about, in terms of the advice card, transforming through the acknowledgement of the presence of the Prince of Cups, whether that prince is you or someone else or something else or a combination of all three, transforming that very, very highly charged, idealized, falling in love, all-consuming desire, in the face of these bumps and troughs in the road, in the face of this idea of victory, and in the face of defeat. How does the Prince of Cups grow up in the face of victory and defeat, particularly in the face of defeat? Because, the Prince of Cups and victory is, well, it's just, it sounds wonderful. But the Prince of Cups and defeat is that moment where the Prince of Cups is able to perhaps open his eyes and then see what is going on in his own journey. And so really, in terms of the agency card, it is about, let's situate it inwardly. Let's situate it with you, because given the fact it's the agency card, you are the one thing that you can control. Is where that questing idealization for love and for nurturing and for sex, and that again charged atmosphere of falling in love, because it's not necessarily about love, it's about falling in love. Where is it that is able to be transformed because the path hasn't been as straightforward? The Prince of Cups is an incredibly alive part of the human experience. It is about being driven towards something that is going to fulfill desire. And if we aren't driven towards anything like that, well, then we don't really move at all. And it doesn't necessarily have to be naked bodies or the promise of sex or anything like that, but rather the desire towards being able to feel that charge in one's body. Where it is that allows us to expand our experience of life and of ourselves and of others, and how we can bring a sense of the erotic into our lives. And perhaps there's something here about seeing the Prince of Cups not necessarily as the prince that needs to transform into the Knight, but the Prince of Cups and his sense of the erotic and that very, very calm composure there as a sort of slow burn that is able to assist in this journey from the 6 to the 5 and beyond. Where is it that the erotic can be something that frees us rather than the swords being the thing that keeps us frozen with fear in place, or frozen with a sense of, is there any point in going on? And the Prince of Cups is really symbolic of, well, of course there's a point going on. I mean, look what it is that is possible. This sense of connection to that very, very highly charged inner experience of bodies and of our own body and of what it can do and of pleasure. I think that really here you've got the idea of the erotic in the Six of Wands, and then you've got the Five of Swords, which can very, very quickly sort of twist us into a standstill. The mind works faster than anything else, so we can go from joy to despair in 10 seconds flat. And then the Prince of Cups reconnecting us in with that libidinal flow in the Six of Wands, except it's a very specific libidinal flow. And that is, again, the rediscovery of sexuality, the rediscovery of sensuality, eroticism. It does not require another person. It doesn't require other people. In fact, I would suggest that if you are not connected in with your own eroticism in a way that is independent of others, then you are firmly on the wall of the Five of Swords already, and that may be something then that is inviting you into a deeper sense of communion with, is that inner Prince of Cups. But whether it is the Prince of Cups as an inner sense of oneself or the Prince of Cups as an outer sense, I would say that it's not necessarily about growing up and passed out of that phase, but by shifting into that idea of eroticism and shifting through and then seeing what's on the other side, because it's that is going to be helping with this very, very solid old wall that is sitting there in the Five of Swords. And if you look at the wall, which is crumbling, but it's also hard edges and sharp shards of steel that are sort of pinning the wall. And then you look at the Prince of Cups with all of these bodies and various body parts. He's totally opposite, and these feathers going off the sides of his face and his eyebrows. I mean, and it's really very beautiful and ethereal. And there is a lesson, I think, in that, is to be able to embrace that, to be able to undo or to move past the hardness, the harshness, and the lack of nurturance and the lack of love and emotion and of any sense of connection into one's life force of the Five of Swords, and to remember that the Prince of Cups can take you past that. And then, in that process, the prince then does mature. But here he has a lesson for us. And that is that idea of remembering who we are when we are not mired in the Five of Swords. It's very potent. He is, as I said, very much focused on that. It's almost as if he's meditating upon it. And I think that in terms of the tool card then, this starts out with a musing, a closed-eyed meditation. And I don't necessarily mean you have to close your eyes and meditate, but rather go within and see what the Prince of Cups has to say, or what he brings to you within, because it starts there. It starts with yourself. And I'm going to leave it there for this month. A very, very different set of cards after a month's break. Maybe the break was what was needed. I'm not sure. But it's almost as if after the break, there's a new journey that's been started with the Six of Wands. And with the Prince of Cups as your own inner traveling companion, the journey is not going to be boring, and neither are you going to have to stay in that central card for too long. It may be that the Prince of Cups has his work cut out for him in you, that that is about connecting in. But my sense is, because this is a Five of Swords and it is a scuffle, it's a skirmish, that this doesn't have to be a place that you stay for long at all. And in fact, you may just give a nod to it as you sail on past, and you can see then the perspective from the point of view of the figure in the Five of Swords. And then maybe something entirely different will present itself to you, courtesy of the Prince of Cups. I'll leave it at that for this month. Any questions, comments, please comment below if there is any space in the podcast to do that. Otherwise, you can always email me at sarah@integratedtarot.com. and I will speak to you again next month with October's new moon reading. Until then, goodbye.